When you think of classic Western films, you probably picture cowboys and Native Americans locked in endless conflict. But the true story behind these legendary clashes is much more complex. In reality, the so-called Cowboys versus Indians narrative was shaped by Hollywood, often distorting the facts for entertainment. Historically, the arrival of European settlers in North America led to the displacement of many Native American tribes. As settlers pushed west, they sought land for ranching and farming, often leading to disputes with native communities whose way of life was threatened. Cowboys, who were mostly ranch workers and cattle herders, sometimes found themselves on the frontier, but they were not the main force behind the violence. Instead, most conflicts arose between native tribes and the U.S. military or government-backed settlers. Treaties were frequently broken, and forced relocations, such as the Trail of Tears, caused immense suffering. The real history is one of colonization, resistance, and survival, far removed from the simple good versus evil story seen in old Western movies. Of course, this is a very broad and complex topic. The true story behind the Indian-cowboy conflict, often depicted in films, is very different from the Hollywood version. In short, the narratives of classic Westerns are vastly simplified, exaggerated, and often historically incorrect. They created the myth of the Wild West that influenced the world's perception for decades. Let's break down the historical reality based on a few key points. 1. The oversimplification of the concepts of cowboys and Indians. Indian tribes. The term Indian refers to hundreds of distinct tribes, each with its own unique language, culture, government, and way of life. Tribes like the Lakota, Cheyenne, Apache, Comanche, and Navajo have very different histories and relationships with European settlers. Grouping them together as one entity, Indians, is a major mistake. Cowboys. Similarly, cowboys are not a homogeneous group. Many of them were Civil War veterans from the poor South, Mexican immigrants, who were originally called vaqueros and who invented many of the cattle herding techniques, African Americans, known as black cowboys, who were estimated to make up 25% of the total cowboys, and ordinary settlers seeking a living. 2. Who was really in the conflict? The primary conflict was not between cowboys and Indians, but rather between Native American tribes versus the United States government and the U.S. Army. Native American tribes versus settlers and gold prospectors. Cowboys were just one of many groups operating in the region. Large-scale armed conflicts often involved U.S. soldiers, such as the 7th Cavalry, against warriors from various tribes. 3. The true root causes of the conflict. This conflict was not about good versus evil, but rather about land and resources. The dream of land control, manifest destiny, drove the U.S. government to take over the Western territories. The discovery of gold in areas like the Black Hills, sacred land to the Lakota, was the catalyst for massive conflict. Destruction of subsistence. White hunters slaughtered millions of bison buffalo to the brink of extinction. Bison were a source of food, clothing, and culture for the Plains tribes. This was a strategy to force them to surrender and move to reservations. Treaty violations. The U.S. government made hundreds of treaties with Native American tribes, but nearly all of them were violated or broken when white settlers sought economic or land interests. Culture clash. The concept of land ownership differed greatly. For many tribes, land was something to be managed collectively, not to be privately owned and sold. This fundamental difference was often misinterpreted as savagery. 4. How did cowboys and Native Americans actually interact? Their relationship wasn't always conflictual. In many ways, they even collaborated. Cultural exchange. Cowboys learned many herding techniques from Mexican vaqueros, who in turn learned from the Native Americans. They adopted the use of lassos, familiarity with saddle types, and horsemanship. Trade. Many trading posts existed where cowboys, settlers, and Native Americans traded goods such as hides, blankets, weapons, and food. Employment. Native Americans were sometimes employed as herders or guides because of their intimate knowledge of the terrain and livestock. Intermarriage. Marriages between white men, including cowboys and fur traders, and women from local tribes were not uncommon. 5. Native American resistance and tragedy. The Wild West period was a particularly tragic and violent time for Native American tribes. Forced removal. Many tribes were forcibly removed from their ancestral lands to reservations, often with infertile land and remote from resources. This journey, much like the Trail of Tears for the Cherokee Nation, killed thousands. Massacres. Many horrific massacres of Native Americans occurred, such as the Sand Creek Massacre, 1864, in which U.S. troops killed over 200 Cheyenne and Arapaho, mostly women, children, and the elderly. Cultural destruction. Assimilation policies forced Native American children to abandon their languages, cultures, and beliefs, as was the case in boarding schools. So, the real story is one of resistance, land grabbing, and a nation's survival against an unstoppable wave of expansion. The narrative of classic westerns is more a reflection of the American values of the time, 1950s, etc., which require clear heroes and villains, than an accurate depiction of a bloody and complex history. Modern films like Dances with Wolves, 1990, and the 1883 series have begun to correct this narrative by presenting a more balanced and tragic perspective. It's fascinating to follow the real history behind the cowboy versus Native American conflict, far from the Hollywood myth. Dive into the facts. Follow. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support this Kakbukar storytelling content.